This is the Converging Perspectives podcast.
Kevin Alexander is an expert in nonviolent communication. And in this polarized time, I think it's really important that we start to have an understanding of the communication necessary to break down these entrenched viewpoints. And so I wanted to talk to Kevin about NVC and how it works on people in different situations. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Andrew. It's nice to be here. And the first thing is I feel a little uncomfortable with the word expert, but I have studied nonviolent communication for 15 years now. And so I know it. Yeah, I know it pretty well.
What is nonviolent communication, Kevin, and why do they call it nonviolent?
Yeah, so nonviolent communication was created by a gentleman named Marshall Rosenberg in the 1960s. It's called nonviolent communication because his take was basically that if power over people and making people do things that they may not meet their needs or they may not want to do is violent, then a lot of the ways in which we communicate and behaviors we use to get what we want are currently violent. And so he created a way of connecting and communicating that he suggests is not violent, where we come to collaborative agreements. So that's why it's called nonviolent communication, or in short, NVC.
So what would be an example of a violent conversation?
Well, I mean, anywhere you look currently, but we could do a simple one in a relationship between a husband and a wife. The husband comes home and opens the door and sees that the dishes in the sink aren't clean or something, and uses a name call like, "You're lazy and I want those dishes cleaned. Why aren't those dishes cleaned?" And the wife either goes and cleans the dishes, feels afraid and decides to clean the dishes, or fights back and says, "Well, you're an asshole because, you work all the time and you never come home and I'm bored," and then it just escalates from there and to the extremes of where there can be domestic violence, or the extreme where like people just disconnect, sit on their phone while the other watches soap operas. Those are some old examples, but yeah. And there's ways with this language to express that so that there's actually a connection and collaboration.
One thing I want to get at is that it can be that obvious of just like name calling and stuff, or it could be more subtle, right? Where it's just the way someone uses language because that's what they were taught growing up, is sort of controlling the story or the narrative around the behavior and saying, you always do this, like this is the story. And that itself is a form of manipulation of another person, right?
Maybe I can take probably about a minute to just actually let the viewers know what the structure of nonviolent communication is. It's actually a process. Would that work for you?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And would that work for you is actually the fourth step of NVC, where I make a request of you. You could have just said no. The first kind of step, which is really the non-step of NVC, is really just this heart, this presence that's always here. NVC is sometimes referred to as heart-based communication. And so that first step is just, here we are. We're just here. Meditation at its core is just resting as observing sensations internally and externally. And so from that space, these desires, these longings, these needs begin to arise. And what is my intention? Do I want to connect or not connect in this moment? So from that space of desiring connection, let's say, there are 4 steps to NVC. We'll use the example of the husband coming home. The first step of NVC is we're always observing. So he opens the door. He observes that there's a lot of unclean dishes sitting in the sink. And so rather than making a judgment, which is like those dirty dishes or anything that's basically adjectives or adverbs, NVC drops a lot of that and tries to be just the facts. I know you went to film school at USC. It's like you're the camera, just the things that are coming in, not the like beautiful tree or whatever, or beautiful dishes, just the dishes. So it would be something, it's a non-evaluative observation, the first step. When I observe many dishes in the sink, and then you go to the next step, which is the feeling that's coming up. So you would say, when I observe many dishes in the sink, I feel frustrated. Maybe there's a feeling of frustration or anger. That feeling then takes us to the third step of NVC, which is the power of NVC. This is what makes it different than all the therapeutic models that I've studied in psychotherapy. I even have a list I did a while ago about how it resolves DBT and CBT and all of these strategies that we've used in the psychotherapeutic community, which I think are largely just taking babies out of the river, basically from a dysfunctional system. NVC is systemic changing. It is systems changing. Marshall would say it's 10,000 years old. It's pre-religion, if you will. We could even at some point talk about how it relates to Buddhism, and maybe how desire actually isn't a problem. It's the strategies to meet the desires that was the confusion. So we're always observing. Feelings are arising. In this case, there's a feeling of frustration. And then the beauty of NVC, like I said, that's not known by many for some reason, is these feelings are hitting these universal needs that all humans have. So maybe in this case, the husband has a need for order or cleanliness. So the way we would express that in NVC to continue is when I observe the dishes, many dishes in the sink, I feel frustrated because I have a need for order and cleanliness. And then the fourth step is to make a request. The strategy, the behavior that is actionable, so something you can do. It's not just, as I've seen in some of the more pluralistic viewpoint communities, someone calls some of the conscious communities, where it's all about feelings and touch and it's all this heart, and nothing ever happens. Nothing gets built and created, right? It's a balance between that and an actionable, a thing we're actually going to do about the dishes in a clear way. So a clear, actionable request. And what a clear request means is that you don't say something like, would you not do this, but what you would like done. You're clear about what you want done. So we finish it off as the husband. When I observe many dishes in the sink, I feel frustrated because I have a need for cleanliness and order. Would you be willing to clean the dishes? Or would you be willing to move the dishes? Right? This now, because an external interacting or relating, it's relational, the wife has many responses from there because it was, would you be willing to, right? Would you not, as opposed to, would you not leave dishes in there? She'll hear that and she'll contract. And next thing you know, you're fighting and name calling again. And then, so from that space, she has the opportunity to say yes or no, right? And there are ways then with NVC, always sticking with the 4-step process, which I use an acronym just to help, mnemonic device. We call it either oftener or offens. We're always observing, feelings are arising. Those feelings are an indication of these universal needs, some need in ours that's being met or not met. And then we offer a strategy or make a request of how to get that need met, right? It's even happening right now as you're listening. There are things you're observing, feelings are coming up, needs. We use that basics, whether we're externally relating with somebody, whether I'm talking to, if I have a wife, or whether I'm internally relating just to self-empathy, to self-connection. What am I observing, feeling, and needing inside, to that inner dialogue that's going on?
So you'd be having this NVC conversation with yourself rather than being an asshole.
Totally. In fact, I would argue, especially for me, it's the self-empathy or the self-connection side that is almost more important than the external. Because first, we always check in to see if maybe there's something we can resolve internally by ourselves or whether we need to speak it. So the 4 steps are oftener, observing, feeling, needs, and requests. Always first coming from like an intention that we want to connect, because you can use NVC to be very violent. You can manipulate with it. People will eventually pick up on it. It won't work. But so we're always using oftener. And then all that's really going on in life, we're all maybe just trying to make love to each other and don't know how to, which seems like part of your podcast is how can we dissipate this illusion of separation in a way that really works and helps us share our heart with each other and come up with things that work for all of us. All we're doing is either internally relating, right, to what's going on inside of Kevin or Andrew using oftener, or externally relating to others outside of us using oftener. If I'm doing the dialogue internally, I'm either listening empathically, using oftener to what the thoughts are saying to me, or speaking honestly back to the thoughts, So if I have a thought like, Kevin, you're an asshole, right? In NVC, there's no name calling. We'll get to that eventually. And it totally happens in the world. And no, I hear it all the time. I'm pretty good at now being like, oh, that's an unmet need behind that person calling me an asshole. And do I want to figure out what that's about? But so let's say in my head, I hear, Kevin, you're an asshole. I immediately use oftener and go, oh, I think I'm observing that you're feeling frustrated because you have a need for more connection and reassurance. And you're wanting to know that Andrew doesn't mind that you're talking a lot right now, or you're using a lot of words. And then until I'd be like, yeah, that's kind of right. And then the speaking honestly, be like, so maybe you're wanting to ask him if it's all right, how what I'm sharing has affected him. Or we're externally doing the same thing. We're either listening empathically to people or we are speaking honestly what we want, which is what the husband did when he opened the door. Right? He opened the door, saw the dishes, and honestly spoke what he was wanting in the moment, some order, and would she be willing to clean? He could have walked in and offered oftener empathy or NVC empathy. I'm seeing these dishes here, right? I'm observing these dishes here, and I'm wondering if you're feeling really overwhelmed today and you're just needing some ease. And so you're just deciding to leave them there because it's making your life more wonderful right now. Right? That's giving her the love and empathy as opposed to asking for what he might want.
And in a way that's even softer because it's curious about why that's happening instead of implying this shouldn't be happening, which even the request implies in a way that this shouldn't be happening. But the curious question is more open to, oh, this is strange. You don't normally leave dishes in the sink. What's going on, sweetheart?
I experience you as having more of that sensitivity, which is really helpful. Typically in NVC, if we feel we've self-connected enough and we can handle it, we usually would do just what you were picking up on. We lead with empathy. We actually empathize before I educate. So if I were to interact with somebody and they called me an asshole or something, I wouldn't say to them, well, in NVC, an asshole is name calling. And I think there's actually these feelings and needs behind what you're saying to me. That's me still trying to be in control, sort of. What I would do if I felt sourced enough, you tune in. I just got called an asshole. I'm observing that felt really scary. And I kind of have a need for consideration and also some clarity. Do I want to ask for that right now? Or do I maybe need to say, hey, I really got to go to the bathroom. And you just go to the bathroom. It's a great strategy to just get out of a dynamic if you need to tend to yourself for a bit.
I want to emphasize that for a second. Like, it's really important to short circuit the jackal cycle, right? Marshall Rosenberg uses jackal language and giraffe language as examples of the fight of the jackal versus the I'm above the fight of the giraffe. I translate everything into feelings and needs instead of fight.
So what I think what Andrew's saying is, Marshall Rosenberg used sort of a device to suggest that the consciousness that we have been educated in our country and in our world largely is what he calls jackal language. And jackal language is just language where you're less likely to get what you want and tends to cause more violence, to be critical, judgmental, all the things you turn on major mainstream media right now, which I have so much compassion for and also some frustration around. And you're just watching the way we were educated play out. It's no one's fault even. And giraffe language, as you said, is sort of above it, or really just being tuned into our heart. Giraffes supposedly have the largest heart in the animal kingdom, and that's why they used it. And so is to tune into the feelings and needs that's going on inside us or inside of others, and having that consciousness. So we're almost less above it, but we're actually willing to be in it, to actually be in it, which sometimes we're not. I know I'm often not. But yeah, so that's
but to be in it in a conscious way, in a giraffe way, rather than a jackal way. Because if you're in it. Because if you're in it as a jackal, it's going to escalate. It's going to escalate until it's a full-on fight, name calling, like, screw you. It's like, that's what jackal does. It's like a chain reaction of violence.
Which is so beautiful. Yeah, totally. I hear you. And which is also so beautiful because in NVC also, only one person has to know NVC. So if I feel that I'm self-connected enough, I have enough self-love and empathy and feel safe enough, when you say screw you, I can stay in that because I'm now in giraffe, and I can just say, oh yeah, are you feeling really angry right now because you have a need for consideration? The first thing is the most important, our presence, what we're really wanting to be in this with the person. But by using Offner, I don't have to get my empathetic guess right. So when you said screw you to me, I don't actually know why you're saying it fully, but I'm going to try to guess. Are you feeling frustrated because you have a need for consideration? Just by doing that, your body will begin to let you know. And you'll see this when I interact with people. I see a lightening of the pallor of the skin. I see, if you call it the energy body, whatever, I see like the presence. I see something come online. And they may be like, yeah, that's right. Or they'll be like, no, I'm feeling scared because I have a need to be heard. Would you be willing to listen to me for 5 minutes? There's the clear, actionable request.
And if they don't give you the request and they're just like telling you how they're feeling, then you might ask them, would you like me to give you some respect and honor where you're at right now?
I just got back from this intensive. It was fun to see the spectrum of NVC people. There are people who know Offner. And there was a deep recognition from the meditation practice that there's also just the simplicity of this. And the process eventually is just, they're crutches to use Offner because we've been educated since we're in the sandbox incorrectly. Marshall would often say, like, he's pretty convinced that 6-year-olds could resolve most of the problems in the world if they were given an opportunity and knew this language. That basically we educated them into violence and incompetence, into ways that aren't going to get what we want.
They educated us to manipulation and power games that we seem to think are normal.
Power over versus power with. But somewhere in our heart, we know it's not normal. But I do want to also be clear, if we check into some universal needs for a moment, some of the universal needs, they're really important. 2 of the most important needs I have found in the clients I work with, meet a need for some understanding or clarity. The first is clarity. It's like, I went to law school years ago. One of the first things that when they practice law is they do a lot of due diligence. They do a lot of like discovery. try to get as much facts and info, as much clarity around what's going on as you can before we decide what's the right strategy to resolve this, right? So to figure out what someone's feeling and then figure out what the needs are there, that's what's really going on. And then we come up with a behavior that'll work. So clarity is a really big one, which is a weird one because a lot of people don't think of that one often. And then the second is safety. Especially in a therapeutic setting, people are feeling afraid, whether they're saying it or not, and they have a desire for safety. And to figure out what behavior for that individual will meet that need for safety. Like for me, when I get overwhelmed and need safety, which can occur, I have found by dialoguing with myself, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're needing safety, and you're wanting touch. And so sometimes I'll just kind of rub my leg when I'm interacting with someone. Like that's the behavior that my body told me. When we get to the R part of Offner, to the request, there are these magical possibilities just floating around in the collective conscious that we're largely not aware of, and they just suddenly pop into our head. I may come up with an idea of a solution or a strategy that we had never thought of before. It just suddenly comes to you. It's like these divine gifts, if you will. And so I offer that because getting really clear on what the need is, suddenly the strategy sometimes just comes out of thin air. And it could be something we never thought, of before.
We're human, and so we have a basic idea of what we want to happen or what we see as the possibilities, and it's usually quite narrow. This is how this is going to get done, is the way I've conceived of it. But there are probably dozens of ways it could get done, many inefficient and dumb, but still, it would still get done. And it might actually, some of those ways might actually please other people more than you realize. And so being open to a solution that is not what you've just formulated in your head also allows the other person to be involved in the decision making, which means you're not taking all the power and forcing something on them. Your solution might be exactly what this other person wants, but if you're forcing it on them, they're going to resist it inherently because they don't want to encourage that power dynamic to exist.
I love that. And there's so much there I'd want to talk to. I'd be curious to know what the concern is about power. I have seen in the circles I've been in, I've seen some people who really use it or use Offner in a way that does not align with how I think it was intended, or that I think is not as clear as it should be. And I imagine there's people who see me, like I have pretty good self-observation. I tend to be too rigid with it still. I'm learning to soften and be more with the intuitive side of it, which is usually where you'll just stick more with the feelings and not always having to talk about the needs.
Let me try to manipulate you with NVC. So Kevin, I've noticed that you really love NVC. I feel like that would make a great podcast. Would you like to come on my podcast? It seems like there's no reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah. So to me, I don't hear any manipulation in that. I hear you trying to tune into what's alive in me. You're giving me empathy, right? You're observing me talk about it when we've talked before, and you're hearing that I feel excited about it and maybe have a need to share with others.
If you've got the backstory, then you're right. This is all real information that I have. But I'm saying if I just met you and you're saying maybe I'm not interested in doing your podcast, and I'm just like, I don't see how you could possibly be interested in anything else.
If I don't know NVC, it's probably not going to go good. I'll probably go into people pleasing, which I still do a ton of. And I'll be like, oh yeah, let's go. And then I'll get off the phone or the meeting. I'll be like, I don't want to ever see that guy again. I don't want to do that. So I can play either side of the coin. You'll see. And these are generalizations. Like I don't see Democrats and Republicans. All those are name calling for certain values that people have. Republicans tend to be more about autonomy and freedom and accountability and self-responsibility. And Democrats tend to be more about community and safety and
compassion and fairness.
Compassion, things like that, right? The ironic thing is, since this podcast is partly about the dissolution of separation, they actually have both, right? Republicans largely want to cry in a room and they're too afraid to. And Democrats, in some respects, want to scream in a room and they're too afraid to, except for the ones who do all the fascist stuff, which is usually mommy-daddy issues. Most things playing out I've seen are mommy-daddy issues, which can just go up generational lines and get crazy. That's some of the work I've done with people.
So NVC is something that can actually stop that spiral of trauma that spreads through generations.
I wouldn't even use the word stop for me, because I'm all about for. NVC is about what's alive in us. Like in NVC, you're always in choice in us. And the hope is that we're always making choices that align with our needs and are fulfilling us. So we're basically, like he would often say, don't do anything that's not play, that doesn't bring you joy. I also want to honor, I'm not fully in that space right now. I still have fears around making some of those requests, but I'm becoming better at it.
Let me just touch on that. Like key language, would you be willing to? There's like almost nothing better than that right now, right? Like that's a beautiful question because there's not much pressure in it, right? It is a request. So there's a little bit of pressure, but it's basically, would you be willing to? It's not even saying, are you willing to? It's like not now. I need a commitment from you now. There's no commitment. It's just like, would you be willing to?
Well, I don't tell you, you have to clean the dishes. Would you be willing to clean the dishes? But you'll look around the world right now and there's tons of power over, which is you have to do this or else. There's punishment, right?
Right.
So punishment, violence is a wonderful strategy to get what Andrew wants, to actually get somebody to do what you want. So if that's what all you're wanting, it's a really good one. But if you ask yourself the second question, it becomes a really bad one. And I think it's why we see so much hurt, violence, and harm in the world right now. And that second question is, what's the reason I want that person to do it? And if you ask that question, if I tell my wife that I don't want to use a wife anymore, we're going to have a powered woman. The woman comes home and sees the husband hasn't cleaned the dishes. And she says to the husband, if you don't clean the dishes right now, I'm going to go sleep with the neighbor, or I'm going to beat you. Whatever she can do to punish him, right? He may do it because he's scared to get hit, or he's scared that she'll go do that. But if you ask yourself the question, what's the reason she wants him to do that? He's going to do something against her later to make up for it. Maybe he'll leave his nacho cheese all over the couch or something.
It's not a collaboration, and it's actually violently breaking the connection that those two people have, which is to me the most important thing. I've talked on this podcast about conscious conversation, which requires this openness to connect and play together. The more you use force and violence on someone, the less they feel safe enough to play with you. And so there's like the connection's not really there. It's being severed. It's being damaged. It's being sort of forced into a fist to resist whatever your pressures are.
NVC is a process to express our hearts to each other, because maybe our heart is just talking right now, but is a process for connection. It is a 4-step process for connection. And eventually, as you become masterful and it becomes into the conscious, because it's a consciousness, eventually you don't have to use oftener anymore. It becomes much more casual. I'm really trying to create connection with Andrew or with the other person. And from that quality of connection is where these strategies will arise. And Marshall just realized that these 4 steps, especially the needs one, is how that connection can be created. So what I do when I teach NVC is, first off, we are putting on crutches, Andrew. We're going to have you in like Eugene Levy. I can't remember the film, where I think it's him, who is in the full body cast or whatever, whoever it is. I'm putting people in pretty full body casts for consciousness to relearn. And so I teach them often, right? And then eventually I begin to say, you know what? Oftener can also be Rothen. You can lead with your request before you say what you observed and you're feeling and you're needing. Or it can be Fonr, F-O-N-R. And so that's how we begin to take some of the cast off. And then eventually saying, guess what? Actually, it's just about this quality of connection we're trying to create. And so we don't even have to speak. We can just stare at each other. And it can be this tuning into what's these needs are, what's alive in us. Although words are very, no, they're necessary too. I've been in enough stare circles where nothing's
happening.
It's the balance, right? I'm very for the balance. Yeah.
This is so important to recognize that it's not a unique, esoteric, cultish design. You have to follow these steps or it won't work. That's what you do. It's just the training wheels. That's good. But in the long term, it's really just about staying present and conscious with another human being, and not by accident pulling in some aggressive, forceful communication that breaks the connection, that makes you now rivals instead of partners.
Totally. Yeah, I would say that the only thing that I feel afraid when I hear that is that I have found, like the intensive I went, that I actually think the people who came there and really didn't know much NVC, maybe they read the book once or so, they really needed a lot of crutches, and they were pretty quickly given into the flowy, and it was a mess. And it was just back to basically kind of passive aggressive, violently communicating that they thought was NVC, but it really wasn't clear. And so I actually think for a while it is really useful to be really stifled, but always remembering, like you said, that what am I wanting in this moment, and its connection, and really staying with that. And again, I'll always emphasize how important the 3rd step of the needs are. Because I've been with people like even Eckhart Tolle, you go on all these teachers, see teachers, and I see they don't know, they're not being fully honest. They don't know how to fully express the desire that's arising there, even though there's so much observational presence, and I can't help but wonder if things don't get messier for them than they need to be, if they didn't know this way of of connecting.
Right. So the
Um,
structure is so important because it's in a way it's sort of the masculine where the feminine is the feeling and
Perfect.
listening. The masculine is the edge of like I need this structure to communicate properly so that I'm not pushing my needs on you without your
Yeah.
agreement. And I
So I
think
know how.
that's so important too, right? Is that the needs, as I understood it, NVC teaches the needs are not something the other person has to meet. That is not their responsibility. You are stating your need so that you're aware and they're aware that you have a need. But if they would not be willing to meet it right now, then it's your responsibility to find another way to meet it.
Absolutely. What I'm hearing you say is there's the understanding that when we get to the R of Offner and I've made my request, would you be willing to? The worst case scenario is that the person says, no, I can't. And you can always find somebody else. Once you know what your need is, you can find somebody else who'll be able to. Observations are just the facts, non-evaluative. Feelings, you'll often hear people, feelings are you say you're feeling. You'll often hear people say, I feel like, or I feel that. That's usually not a feeling, that's a thought. Right? I feel like you're kind of cool, but not cool, Andrew. Like, I don't even,
Right.
that's not a
I
feeling,
feel
you know?
like you've been disrespecting me for years, and now it's
Yeah.
like no, no, no,
Which
no.
is,
That
yeah, and you
you're now
can
you're
see them.
forcing a story on that person, supposedly with your feeling statement.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like by seeing your face get red there, where they would say, it's like, I'm feeling angry because I've been needing respect for so many years in our interaction, and I've been wanting this. In any event, so feelings, feel like, feel that is usually not a feeling. And then needs are just these universal needs we all have. What are some needs you think people have in the world? What do you think is a need Donald Trump has? And I'm actually not against him. I'm not for him. I'm bored by him. I see the
Right.
utility he offers as a strategy to currently meet the need.
I think it's obvious that Donald Trump has a need for praise, to be given respect. And I mean, I think underneath that is really a need for love, but that's never what he seems to ask for. He seems to want to be given praise all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I really connect with that. So I think I heard you say that he has a need for respect, and love actually is a need. And then there's an action to meet that need for love. If I sat down with him and you would just figure out what his need for safety and love that wasn't met by his parents, by their behaviors, and you'd slowly, by giving him empathy, he would begin to soften and begin to admit that, yeah, he's feeling really afraid and he's wanting love. He's really wanting to know that when he says things that people will listen, even if they're not going to do what he says. Like it always ends up going back to our parents. And there's a whole process I use with role playing to do that. So I'm hearing respect and love with Trump.
And control. I mean, I think he wants control.
It's really important in NVC, and you'll see this in the world, that we separate needs from strategies. So the needs from requests, or needs from strategies, the N from the R, the N from the S, right? Because often we're conflating what we think are needs, what we think are strategies that are actually needs, and the opposite also, sometimes needs that are strategies. So I may have a need for reassurance or respect, and I use a strategy of control by trying to tell other people what to do. Yeah, we just have to be careful to separate the two. And what we do in NVC is we just focus on the needs. When we get clear on needs, the strategies will begin to come of themselves.
I'd like to focus more on how to how to use NVC to talk to people that you disagree with. And I might just jump all the way to some extreme examples because I have friends. I have a lot of good friends who are intelligent and reasonable people, but I have some friends that are kind of on the outskirts of their predictions or their appraisals of reality, where I would say we're talking about conspiracy theory levels of projection of what is without really any evidence for it, but it's a very extreme narrative in which this is the reason why all of these things are happening, and it's because of these evil people lurking in the shadows that really control everything, and somehow we need to root them out.
Yeah, that's the fun. Those are fun ones. Yeah, I'm hearing some concern about some friends you have that you care for, that you also would like to have more connection with and clarity around where they're coming to what they believe. Is that right? And that right is the request part of, like, I'm doing NVC empathy with you there. a very casual form.
Well, and so I struggled not to just judge them as like, wow, that's kind of crazy. That's not what the evidence suggests. But I know at the same time that these people they've changed their media sources. They are reading and watching videos from extreme pundits and podcasters who essentially are painting this narrative. Why? Because it's exciting, it's entertaining, it's getting them more viewers and more money. I have to caution myself that I've made a judgment around a lot of these people already as being off the deep end as far as having any sort of checks and balances in their minds about reality. They're basically just, I want to believe this wild conspiracy theory.
So theoretically, what I think is going on for me and for anybody is we're basically just projecting our unmet feelings and needs from our caregivers, which are usually our parents, onto external situations. So most people into conspiracy theories have one of their caregivers, or if they just had one, who was doing a lot of power over, and they didn't know how to articulate. The kid didn't know how to articulate. That person did not articulate what they wanted or to empathize back. And then it plays out 40 years later or 25 years later with believing these conspiracy theories of like there's someone in control, who's doing all this.
Right.
So that's
like
kind of
a dark god essentially manipulating reality in the shadows.
Which that dark god is really their parents coming at them when they were, or their caregivers coming at them when they were younger and not knowing how to express their feeling and need when they were to yell at the kid or to do whatever they did to the kid. And so the kid slowly shuts down parts of themselves or their needs. And then when they get older, begin to believe in what we'll call these dark gods, which are just like, mommy, daddy, or caregiver, I'm so angry at you or so afraid of you because I needed respect when you did that. And I didn't know how to say that, or I didn't understand what you were saying and wish you had communicated more clearly. If we'd had conscious parents or parents who knew Offner, instead of yelling at the kid, they'd say, hey, when I observe all the toys in the room, I feel really frustrated and a little scared because I need order to be able to function in the home. Would you be willing to clean the stuff up in the next hour? And then the kid can decide. It's a really conscious.
You've given an interesting explanation for why people have a tendency towards conspiracy theories as their narrative of reality. But I guess I'm also interested in how what's my underlying need when I need to judge these people as crazy.
How do we practically do it? What Marshall would say, if he could strap a kid with any tool when they went home, if they didn't have time to fully learn NVC, he would give them empathy. So when the parent came at the kid when they were younger, and this could maybe avoid the ones who tend into conspiracy theories. So when the caregiver goes, you're a useless, dirty kid and your stuff's everywhere and you have to stay in your room for 2 weeks and you can't go out with your friends. The kid would just say, you're feeling really frustrated right now. You're observing stuff everywhere. O of Offner. You're feeling really frustrated because you need order. Is that right? OFN, and then some clarity seeking with a request. And that will soften the person. That's what he would strap every kid with if he could. If you couldn't teach them the whole thing, he would say, just know that, and you'll slowly soften your caregiver, right? And your caregiver is just playing out their unmet feelings and needs with you as a kid that their parents played out with them. It's just the generational trauma, which I call unmet feelings and needs. Now we'll get to the practical for what you're asking. So you got a friend, and they're coming with a lot of unmet feelings and needs expressed in the strategy of conspiracy theories, right? The first thing we always do is self-connection. We check into what's going on in our head, right? And so what I'm hearing you say is the word like, oh, they're crazy is coming up. That's a pretty common thing to have. So we hear that and we go, oh, we throw Offner towards it. We offer the connection, self-connection of Offner. And I'm observing this person say this. I'm feeling really kind of confused and maybe a little afraid because I want to live in a world where we can have sort of some facts that we can agree on. And I'm needing some clarity. Ooh, do I have the willingness to ask for this right now from this person? Or do I need to maybe just step away? Or
let me follow up on that because I think it's really important. It sort of gets to the rubber meeting the road right here, because right and left are dealing with people who believe completely contrary facts right now. And so simply being willing to go, okay, the fact that my friend just said this, which I think is objectively untrue based on everything I've read, is making me feel scared right now. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Why? Because my friend network and I usually agree on a consensus of what reality is, at least roughly, not every single detail, but a hive mind or a extended mind that is creating reality together. And so when my friend has this blatantly different reality from me, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel unsafe.
Most people who went to law school or who were lawyers, they're really good at the honesty side of the coin. They're really bad at the being fragile. And it comes from, caregiver stuff. Having said that, yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you feel uncomfortable because you have a need for safety and maybe some clarity. And you're really wanting to, in those moments, maybe ask them, you express that to them and ask them if they could clarify where they got those facts, and also what need of theirs believing that might need for them.
I think that second part's even more important, because what I've found talking to lots of different people is that basically they'll start rattling off facts or non-facts that they've listened on podcasts, and they'll clobber you with, a kind of a logical fallacy strategy to win you over that doesn't necessarily bring you over.
At the wall that don't, yeah.
Yeah, it's like all this stuff, it's like obvious. It's like, it's a hasty generalization. It's a slippery slope. It's a blah, blah, it's a straw man argument. Like, they just do whatever they can to override you so that they can have peace in their minds about their reality that they've chosen. But what it does is just creates more disconnection for reality. And what I'd like to do is to feel like we're connected again. And I think the second part of what you said is more likely to work at this stage, because I don't want to comb through 14 hours of all their sources for why they believe what they believe. I just want to know why they need to believe that. Why do they want that idea to be true?
All right. So what we do in Offner, once you've self-connected, we always try to, and you seem really good at this, we always try to lead with love or with empathy. So usually we're actually not going to speak honestly our needs. We're hearing these confusing comments that we could name call conspiratorial or whatever. Instead, we self-connect, see if we can give ourselves enough self-empathy, meet enough need for reassurance and safety. For me, it's touching my leg. There can be other strategies, right, to meet the need for safety, that we then say to ourselves. So often there is always the structure. And then there's like the self-connection side. There's something I call CERT, because here's the cheesy, here's Madison Avenue marketing, because it's certain to work to help people remember it. So it's SERT. And the S stands for self-empathy. What you just did, we self-empathize using Offner for, what was going on for us. And then we offer empathy to the other person. Oh, I wonder if this person is feeling really afraid and they're needing safety about things going on in the world also. Or they're needing clarity on why their pocketbook is hurting so much. So then we try to have empathy for what we think is going on with them. And that's what we're going to end up externally speaking. NVC is a somatic process. Your body will let you know when the need's being met and when you're prepared to now empathize.
You're not going to do it very well if you're already in fight or flight mode. Right?
Not at all. We're just going to have more of this, which is stuff And then just think of the end of CERT. The R is role playing. If it's so triggered with this person, you can call up what we call an empathy buddy, or someone who knows NVC or Offner, and say, Kev, dude, I got this friend right now, and they're coming at me with a lot of information that's overwhelming me, and I don't quite know how to navigate it, but I want to stay in connection with them. I'm wondering if we can role play some of it. And that's where you can role play, like giving me empathy or just deciding you want to speak honestly what's going on for you through Offner. And then we just try things out till you feel strong enough to now go to them. So that's what the R of CERT is. And then the T is thankful, being thankful, which is the one thing I didn't mention. We'll throw it in now and then continue. The last step of NVC, which is sort of an ancillary one, some people don't do, is celebration or being thankful, which is actually when someone meets our need, we don't say to them like, Andrew, you're awesome, or you're dope, dude, or dude, your vibe is so high, you're fire. That was millennials. I can't remember what the younger generation now uses, right? Because those are just name callings. They're actually meaningless. In NVC, being called amazing or a piece of shit are just the same thing, because they're both an unclear expression of an unmet need. Your piece of shit one day will be the awesome person the next day. So we try to learn to not hear compliments or insults, right? We try to listen to the feelings and needs being expressed below it. So an NVC celebration or thankful, I would say for the podcast, when I observe you bringing me on the podcast, Offner, I feel happy because my need for support and also sharing something that I think can contribute to the world is met. So thank you. So I do the first 3 steps of often. And that's more useful than just saying you're awesome, you're the dopest, because you don't really know what that means. But now you know how I felt and the need that was met. And maybe in the future, you want to contribute to my life more. You're like, oh, wow, by bringing him on the podcast or by hanging out with him, I met these needs and it was enjoyable, maybe for you too. We're trying to make everybody's life more wonderful is one of the premises of
Yeah.
MDC.
I like it because it's acknowledging the success of the communication, which is the basis of our society.
Yeah, our hearts. Yeah, the love.
Yeah.
It's clarifying to Andrew, or Andrew clarifying to me if he gives me NVC, what it was that I did that met his desires or his needs, so that I know I can serve his life again in that way, and it may make his life more wonderful.
Right. It's a celebration, it's an acknowledgement, and it's also sort of like petting the dog. It's like, this is good. We're doing good. Like, let's keep doing this.
This really supported me. I feel really, It's strength.
Reinforcement.
Yes, I like. You have a lot of intuition. It strengthens the language. It's the petting of the dog. It makes you want to do it more, because not just getting your need feels amazing on its own, but then expressing that you're thankful for it allows the other person to know what they can do again and strengthens you wanting to do it more. There's no such thing as talking too much or too little in NVC. It's just like using more words than are wonderful than meet the needs of Andrew or for me. So there's
no judgment on my use of words.
No, there can't. It's just that it's more words than are wonderful for someone that they enjoy. There can be, and I have tended towards that the last couple of years. But yeah, with the conspiracy person, we give ourselves self-empathy with Hoffner, and then try to give them empathy quietly in our head, and then we decide if we want to now lead with some empathy. You would say to your friend, "Yeah, I'm hearing that when you observe a few individuals with a lot of influence, you feel really confused and angry." And you're wanting some clarity, and you sense that there are a few people who are controlling everything behind us. Is that correct? That was kind of a messy Offner, but that will begin to tune them in to that you're listening, because all of that conspiracy theory is basically a crying out to their caregiver for love.
And so I think like that's a really good thing to understand. And also it might feel a little psychologically evaluative to your friend. To cut to the core of it might be too much for some people. It's really important, I think, to look for that need, to look for the feelings and the needs within these political conversations, because they're aggressive. There's lots of confusion, disagreement. I think if we lead with the feelings and needs, and just like, for example, someone's talking about how dangerous and how terrible things are about to get. And I could say something like, I sense that you're feeling a lot of fear around the future of our country and the world. And so you're getting some acknowledgement there. And then maybe even agree where you can't agree, right? Like, I feel a lot of that too. I'm nervous. There's things that I'm worried about too. I feel what you're feeling, because that's what I think I've seen too. And even with the most ridiculous conspiracy theories, which are beyond just disagreeing about facts, I've seen people, the reason that they're there is because of this fear. It's not necessary to break down reality or convince them that there's something else. I think it's just necessary that we acknowledge there's subtle feelings under the surface that are real to all of us, that acknowledging those feelings is the beginning of us coming back to stand shoulder to shoulder and be like, yeah, we're working on society together. I talk about this in other episodes. If you really break down the values underneath the political rhetoric that we're talking about, you find a ton of agreement that we actually have on what's important about America, about civilization itself, and about keeping things going together.
Andrew, I'm so happy hearing you say that, because there's this desire for connection and mutual understanding. And I have the exact same knowing that it sounds like you also know, which is, I think what I'm hearing you say is that below the fear is this heart or this love, and even fear is love. And there are these universal values, needs, desires, all the same thing, right? For that third step that we all universally share. And if we could get down into that space of needs or values, we may find that there is so much more love and commonality here than we're currently expressing. Even somebody with a fist up ready to hurt you actually is saying, I love you and I'm so afraid. And it's up to us to decide whether we have the ability to navigate that in the moment. NVC is not for violence, but the only way in which it actually is really for physical touch violence is the protective use of force. It is totally about, if you got to use protective use of force.
Another acknowledgement just on what you said, if someone's using force, there's a way to turn that in an NVC-like way to be like, my strategy is to acknowledge, oh, I really admire how much you care about freedom. How much you care about freedom is really great. I love that you're willing to fight for it because it means that you're willing to fight for my freedom as well. And that makes me feel solidarity with you. Right now, I don't think we're actually enemies and we don't need to fight each other, but I'm really grateful to see how much passion and conviction you have that's connected to these values of protecting American democracy.
Yeah, if that feels true to you. I want to call what I do authentic relating. Unfortunately, there's already, as you may know, this process, which does not meet my need for effectiveness. I think it's wonderful for about a year to 2 years. And then you end up in this like grunting at each other and somatic, but like nothing really is clear ever. And it's just like, oh, and NVC is the opposite.
You've got no judgment going on here at all.
No. I have a lot of unmet needs around I don't think it's an effective strategy for what I think true connection could look like. But I have my biggest judgment or frustration is I just want to use the word, but the word's already being used. Authentic relating.
I really love that you have so much passion for this, that you're like, that process that other people like and it's really effective for them is just not good enough. Like, I love that.
Well, for me, it's like authentic relating. It's good at the first step. I just want to use the word. So what I'm beginning to call this is true relating. It's just about being true. That's what Offner and NVC is. And being true is about being true for what our feelings and needs are, or what's alive in us in the moment. And then also listening to what's true or alive in the other person. So you tuning in to like, hey, I really admire that. It seems like you have a real desire for freedom right now. And that really connects for me. And that's where some of this anger is coming from. And then maybe that could be also used to help me too. It's just about being true.
Could we go into narcissism? The word is thrown around a lot today, very sloppily. People are just like labeling people narcissists without any real due process. And it's a way of basic... Fun. It's just a way of villainizing. So it's like, oh, my ex is a narcissist. All my exes are narcissists. That's possible, but unlikely.
It's a really unclear expression of unmet feelings and needs.
This is going to excite because I want to see NVC rip apart the current dialogue around narcissism. But let me first describe my understanding of narcissism, which is also broader than the popular understanding. So you've got the academic view of narcissistic personality disorder, which is literally a diagnosis so that therapists know what the patterns are that they're treating, right? Which is at that level very difficult to treat. But I need to point out that the majority of society is on the spectrum of narcissism. Whenever we're a little bit triggered, whenever we're feeling insecure, we have an automatic universal defense mechanism that goes, I need more status, I need more safety, I need more control. And that this is the basis of narcissism. When it becomes extreme, it is literally a false projection of self that one starts to believe in and try to convince everyone else, this is me, this perfect image of me is me. And that's really based in a lack of self-love. A lack of knowing oneself leads to narcissism. But this is such a universal condition. What this means is that labeling people is ineffective, because what's really going on most of the time with most people in the population is just that we're feeling triggered. And narcissists use jackal language to trigger other people because they're trying to get their needs met through control mechanisms, through strategies. And what then happens is that then you become triggered and your narcissism steps up. And then both people in the relationship are behaving narcissistically toward each other. Then they go, oh my God, all that narcissistic behavior that I saw, like they're a narcissist, clearly. Most of the time, it is just not true. It is just people not taking care of their needs and getting stirred up into their nervous system of fight or flight and getting aggressive. I'd love to hear how you would retranslate or just break through what is typical narcissism. And we don't even have to talk about NPD, where it's become a sort of a chronic, taking over someone's personality. That's an extreme version that we're not trying to solve today. But when it comes to the average person you're going to interact with who's behaving narcissistically, Is there a way for NVC to kind of turn that off?
So narcissism, all these things are just words that are banging off the body mind thing, and then we're having somatic experiences based on, like, unmet childhood needs and collective stuff. And the first thing that's important is narcissism is just thrown all within the notion of name calling. So calling someone a narcissist or an asshole or the dopest or the greatest are all just forms of name calling, which are just all forms of unclear expressions of a feeling and need that was either not met. When somebody calls you an asshole, you weren't meeting their need in that moment. They're rarely going to call you an asshole if you are. And if they call you the dopest, it's because they felt happy because a need of theirs was met, right? But they don't have the consciousness of Offner or NVC to be saying, instead of like, you're the dopest I like basketball. And so if I like pass really well and a guy scores and he's like, yo, Kev, you the dopest. What he's really saying is, hey, I felt really happy because my need for support was met with that pass when I scored. Thank you. So narcissism is just another form of name calling. So what we do, and you were doing it really, clearly figuring out on your own, is a narcissist is just somebody who's not meeting my feelings and needs, my F and N, based on strategies that they're engaging in, S's, right? It's the F and the N and the S, or the F and the S and the R, right? They're engaging in behaviors that aren't meeting my feelings and needs. And I have been educated not to be in tune with my feelings and needs, especially the needs. I think you've seen now in the culture, and it seems to have happened a lot with the millennial or right before, who are all about their feelings, especially men, and they're so in touch, younger generations, with their feelings, but they still don't know the needs that are there. And so now, like, they have trouble with the action quality of life, right? Mm-hmm. They're so intuitive and tuned in, but nothing happens. It's what, Ken Wilber would refer to some of the pluralistic level of consciousness. There's something above that. But so a narcissist is just someone who's engaging in behaviors that don't meet our feelings and needs.
And sometimes they're trying very hard to get their feelings and needs met using you as a
using you as the strategy to get their feelings and needs met. And what you do in that instance is you just offer them, if you've self-connected enough, like we did a moment ago with the conspiracy theorist, somebody who's being the name calling a conspiracy theorist, right? Who's not knowing how to express their feelings and needs. And so they're using the strategy of believing in all of these behaviors that don't seem to be what have really happened in the past or currently. We tune into our feelings and needs and then decide, do I want to try to empathize with them? Do I want to try to drop into that need space that you had mentioned, a little while ago, where we're all actually more similar than we are different? I like your approach. I've never heard it this way. You're talking about kind of self, this sense of self, right?
So one psychologist said narcissism is no self.
This is scary. I think I told you, I was trying to become enlightened for like the last 20 some odd years. And that has sort of faded about 4 years ago, maybe just from so much desperate attempting, but also some clarity. And I say that because in the non-dual circles, we've heard of some non-duality stuff, just means not to, right? Is actually, there isn't a Kevin in here. There is no self in here. You're not going to come in and find me in here at all. And that's what some of the non-dual teachings are, is this pointing to this emptiness that's here, but they're halfway up the mountain thinking they're all the way up. There also is a Kevin here. It's a both and there is this thing that's alive here. And this is where I've decided to stay, because I was kind of done with NVC. Like, can this help me get enlightened? It ends up in my experience, there's no such thing as enlightenment. It's a process of enlightening. It's just enlightened behavior. There's no enlightened being. Sat with enough gurus, boy, they'll engage in some interesting strategies to get their feelings and needs met, off the stage when they're not being seen by everybody. You'll see a very, human person. And so what NVC is, it's process oriented. There's no static thing. So there can't be a narcissist because it's just an unclear expression of a feeling and need, but it's also a static concept. A narcissist pins somebody into a static reality. We are processes. We are ever evolving. And NVC is a process-based language. We are constantly exploring. You'll have different needs in different moments and different strategies that will meet them. It's more fluid. In that sense, it's more feminine.
I like to use the term narcissistic behavior when I'm describing it, because you can clearly see that was a behavior that is in line with the patterns of narcissism. But I'm not saying that's what you are, because I am not qualified to say that's what you are.
Yeah, I'm hearing that it's more the strategy or behavior they're using. And I would just clarify for me that, no, they're engaging in a behavior that made me feel really scared or angry because my need for consideration or being heard or play wasn't met. So it's actually the behavior is just a narcissistic behavior. I think what I'm hearing you say is a behavior that didn't meet your feeling and need. and you're using the word of calling it narcissistic behavior. Is that
Well,
right?
typically narcissistic behavior is triggering for other people
Yeah.
if they have good, healthy boundaries of their own. It's like, whoa, it's criticism. It's very defensive behavior. It's like it's begging for compliments. I have a good list of it actually, but it's essentially
Yeah.
trying to control the narrative of me being perfect and faultless in every situation. That's what it looks like. But we all have the instincts for this. We all want to be seen as virtuous and awesome. The status drive is a natural, inherent drive in the system. So it's not necessarily toxic or diseased or whatever. It's just human. I want to hear how NVC could turn the reactive mechanism of it off so that people can feel like, oh yeah, I'm here again. I'm here with you again. I'm not in this reactive loop anymore. I'm not trying to use you to get my ego needs met. I'm actually feeling pretty good right now. And I'm curious about what you need.
So the way in NVC we would unravel it is if we're self-connected enough that we want to stay in the connection, is to try to empathize with them. So when the person is coming at us, confusing their needs with their strategies, saying, "I want to go on a walk with you, Andrew," and you're like, "No, I really don't want to." But Andrew, like, you're kind of overweight, dude, and like, I think it could help you. Like, you've been saying you want to go to the gym, like, and it's so nice out. And how good is vitamin D for the body? Let's go on a walk, right? All of those were strategies I was using to try to manipulate it into doing what I want. What you would do with that tragic expression of unmet needs by me, or what you've called narcissistic behavior, you would empathize with me. Oh, Kevin, when you observe us talking about some exercise or play, you're feeling really excited and you're wanting to use walking as a way to do that. Is that right? And I'll immediately begin to soften. I'll be like, oh shit, and get really scared. The narcissist is just scared. They need a lot of safety. I want to add one quick thing about the people who are quote unquote qualified, the psychiatrists or the psychologists, they're largely just taking babies out of the river, and they are part of the system. They have identified a bunch of behaviors. Once there's like what, I don't know, the DSM-5, if that's where they're at with the DSMs now. If they've identified 6 behaviors, nine. Okay. So 9 behaviors, they now say you get to get the name calling of a narcissist personality disorder, because these behaviors are just strategies to meet needs, right? As opposed to going back and saying, oh, I wonder what each of those behaviors or strategies they're using, what needs of theirs they're trying to meet. And then slowly deconstructing that with the person. A personality, I think, is an amalgamation of behaviors that we've used to meet our needs since we were born, right? So Kevin is just made up of this persona, which can shift. That's basically all of these behaviors or strategies I've developed to meet my feelings and needs. And that's what we're calling Kevin and Andrew.
Right.
And those things can shift as we learn off them. Do you want to role play?
Yeah. So I'll be the narcissist because I know a lot about it, and you can NVC me back. Well, when I was back in film school at USC, being very amazing because there's only a 6% acceptance rate when I got in. People were telling me, "Oh, you're very much like Cecil B. DeMille. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing your next project. It's going to be amazing." I didn't think much of it at the time because I'm not much of an egotist, but I am pretty good. So if you want a good director to do your commercial, you should really ask me.
Yeah, it sounds like you're feeling pretty excited because you got a lot of affirmation of the things that you did with film, and it made you feel really happy and a need for support. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but I guess. I mean, I guess I'm just that good. Talent doesn't grow on trees. It just happens to show up in certain places.
Yeah, you really have this gift of being able to express things sort of audio visually. And I think I was hearing that you think that you'd be really useful addition to this commercial I'm trying to make.
Well, I think I'd be better than anyone else you're considering, frankly.
Yeah, and pretty certain that you are the right choice. That anybody else I may look at wouldn't be necessary because you're the one.
Yeah, well, who are you looking at? I mean, who else has the pedigree that I have?
Oh, and also maybe some curiosity to know, what the other people I'm looking at, what they might be able to offer, and maybe even wondering what I'm desiring, what might work for me, what needs of mine I'm trying to meet with this commercial. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess I would be interested in the details for sure. Yeah, because it's
So
possible it's possible I'm not the right person for the job. I mean, I Yeah, but it might be fun to work with you too. As I'm promoting myself and bragging, I could feel your acknowledgement just sort of softening my need to brag more. I don't need to do this anymore. This strategy has already succeeded.
Yeah, narcissism, whatever it calls, it's just a strategy for a tender heart that's afraid and needing a lot of safety before it becomes
Right.
more willing to truly, honestly speak what it needs. And it's totally understandable because there was a caregiver somewhere that really harmed them. And like we said earlier, they didn't know how to empathize with that individual. And now they've internalized this strategy or behavior to get their needs met. But so, and then they become willing, as you were, to kind of want to know what's my needs are and what's alive in me. And this is now stepping out of the role play. But yeah, so we would just say, yeah, so I'm also, sounds like, you're a little less certain that you might be the right fit, but you also really long to get to express yourself because you have this passion for the arts. And now maybe I can share with you a little bit about this commercial to see if we might be the right connection around this. Does that sound all right with you?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So this commercial is going to be
Now, Kevin, what if what if it's more aggressive than just that? What if it's like someone's
you soften quick.
What if someone is really pushing your boundaries, just like trying to whittle you into this position? It's like, well, you really should just give me the contract and pay me, $10,000 up front. You said you would do it the last time we talked. I remember, and I've already put so much work into preparing for this based on what you said to me last time we talked.
We are always either listening empathically, so we're listening to the feelings and needs being expressed by the person, or we speak honestly our feelings and needs. In NVC, they often say the empathy is where the healing happens. We meet this need for safety. We get clear on what some of the other needs are, the need for clarity and safety. We then get into what the universal need really is there, and some healing can happen. That can be really good with a therapist, or I do support coaching NVC work with people. But the speaking honestly side, that's the chiropractic. That's where the transformation happens, where Andrew begins to be more true or authentic, true relating with people. You begin to say what you need too. And that's the masculine quality where things can really get done.
So you would basically tell me if I'm demanding something of you that's really not something you agreed to, you would start to reflect back to me my feelings and needs that you're perceiving.
Yeah, you have three choices in each moment. Like you can either go to self-connection, self-empathy, tune in, using Offner. We're always using Offner. That is the core of the way we try to connect. Always remembering what we're trying to do is connect, right? Eventually it becomes, like we said, we drop the crutches of it. But so I tune into my feelings and needs when that message is coming at me. Ooh, I'm feeling really angry right now because I have a need for respect. I'm feeling really overwhelmed that I'm needing some clarity. Maybe I just need to walk away right now and just say a no, Or, all right, I think if I touch my leg and rub it, I think I can handle a little bit of this overwhelm and I can try to tune into now the empathy for them, right? Oh, I think they're feeling excited and also frustrated because they've spent some time on this and they're wanting to be paid back for that or some clarity around it, right? And then we go to the other two ones, which is now I will decide if I want to empathize with you, which is how I softened you, 5 minutes ago with the narcissist role play, or speak honestly, which is like, you know what, I'm not right now. And so I can even make that just like, hey, I hear you. Can we pick this up tomorrow at 2? Be as specific as possible. Or like, I need to go to the bathroom. Or we can say, tends to be a little less effective. We just speak honestly. I'm hearing you say that and I'm feeling really frustrated because I have a need for honesty and clarity. And I'd like to share with you what I understand happened when we spoke yesterday, which I did not tell you that you were going to get the commercial or that you should do any work trying to begin your storyboarding on it or whatever. So there are 3 types of requests. The first 2 are what I call kind of procedural requests. The first is just checking in to see if someone heard you. So I say all that to you and I'm not really certain that you really got what I said. So I'd say, would you be willing to let me know what you heard me say? Really care for our connection. Could you let me know what you heard me say so I know we're still really connected? The second, which is my favorite, this can be really useful for the masculine quality, for people who are more afraid to be vulnerable, to speak honestly what we want. Being empathetic is really easy. That's actually the power position. You probably know this from acting, like listening is the power position, the speaking is the vulnerable position. Speaking honestly, we're being vulnerable. So that second request is I say all that to you. Okay, I'm feeling kind of frustrated because I have a need for respect and understanding and clarity about what occurred. I had not told you that. And I'm wondering, when you hear me say that, how that lands for you. Would you be willing to let me know how that impacts you? And that is also keeping the connection alive and also seeing how you receive my message. And the third one is what we've been doing basically for this whole podcast, which is an action-based request, where we finally get to like, would you be willing to find somebody else to try to make your commercials with, Andrew? You won't be my director. Or yes, I'd like you to be my director. And so that's the action where we begin to create things.